Hi there, and thank you for joining us on The Nation. Today I speak to Rebecca JO-RUSHDY, Malaysia's first Konmari Method certified consultant on decluttering for festivities. Welcome to the show, Rebecca. How are you?
And Sonia.
Great. Hi, Rebecca. It's such a pleasure and honor to have you on the show with us today. I mean, you are the first KonMari Method certified consultant in Malaysia. And we're so excited to find out more about the KonMari Method. Perhaps you can first and foremost tell us what is the KonMari Method, Rebecca?
So the Komari Method is a Japanese art of decluttering. It's a very introspective way of decluttering. So her method is quite different from traditional organizing because what we do is we focus on keeping joy and purpose in our life rather than looking at it from the negative of what we want to remove from our lives. So there's a lot of positive psychology infused in it. You might have heard of the terminology spark joy before.
And yes, so, I mean, I'm a huge fan of Marie Kondo myself. And of course, when, the book was released 9 years ago, it went viral. And of course, a lot of us, tried to practice that lifestyle and implement her practices in our life. But of course, with the term KonMari, is that actually a Japanese term or is it actually a nickname? How did the term come about?
Actually, so the name actually originated from her name, Marie Kondo, and in Japanese, actually, there's a term of endearment. You make nicknames for one another by combining your surname and your first name together. So it's Kondo, Kon, Marie, so it's Komari.
That's interesting. I mean, I've always thought it was like a Japanese term for, cleaning or organizing, but perhaps you can share also about your journey, as a certified consultant, like what inspired you to actually embark on this journey?
Absolutely. So I started my KonMari journey about 9 years ago. Like you said, when the book was released, I read it and I come from a really tidy family. Like my parents both grew up in Japan, so they have that ethos built in them. And it wasn't until I read her book, I was like, oh my gosh, I've been tidying wrong my entire life. And so when I tried her method, it actually changed me from I was a complete shopaholic growing up. And so when I started doing her method properly, then I was able to become a reformed shopaholic. So I am no longer a shopaholic as well. This is how life-changing her method can be. And the title of Marie Kondo's book is actually called The Life-Changing Magic of Tidying Up.
Great. So it's not really a quick fix for, messy room or once in a while approach to tidying, but rather it focuses on decluttering with intention and purpose, right? Yes. And what would you say are some of the methods of KonMari?
So the way that the Komari method works is that, we actually have 6 basic steps as well. So you have to commit yourself first. You have to imagine your ideal lifestyle. So this step I stumbled on when I first read her book 9 years ago. But the reason why we do that is because the power of visualization is so potent. When you're able to imagine what you deem as true to you and what joy means to you as well, then that's where you get that alignment of selecting things that spark joy for you. So that's step number 2. And then the other rules are more technical. So, you do it by the categories. You're not doing it room by room. And the reason why we do this is because when you see everything in totality, let's say, for example, you see books right now, when you do all of your books from all of your rooms at the same time, you get a mental audit of everything that you own. So you'll be able to grasp how much books you have, how much clothing you have. But if you're doing it ad hoc, room by room, then you actually don't get that. You don't actually get that visual trigger. We're creatures, we're visually and triggered by sound as well. So when you're triggered, most of the time my clients will say, oh my gosh, I have enough. I have way too much clothes. I have way too much stuff. So when you have these awareness come into you, then that's where the behavior will lead to change.
Great. Yeah, yes. So, and, yeah. Yes. And I've pretty much seen how, tidiness can actually contribute to a change of lifestyle and getting a peace of mind from our surroundings, right? I mean, of course, when it comes to a very cluttered desk, my mind tends to get very cloudy. I tend to get demotivated to do any work. But tell us how the KonMari method can actually improve one's lifestyle.
Yeah, and I love, Sonia, I love how you raised up the fact of seeing the clutter on your desk will actually make you feel foggy and clutter, right? And the reason why is because, again, we're visually triggered. So just by seeing clutter, it will raise your cortisol levels. It might not be a big trigger, like you'll have a meltdown or anything, but you're actually incrementally raising your stress hormones just by seeing clutter. And I think that's also why a lot of people embarked on their decluttering journey during the lockdowns as well. It's stressful times, and everyone's on top of each other as well. But your home should never be a source of stress. Your home should be a sanctuary. It shouldn't be a storage.
Great. Interesting point that you actually pointed out there. And, I've been a huge fan as well of, I'm not sure if you've seen the show, Get Organized with the Home Edit.
Yes.
And I've seen Marie Kondo's show as well. Is there a difference between the two techniques that are being applied?
Yes, it's two very, very different techniques. So a lot of, aesthetically speaking, Home Edit, it's beautiful. They do the rainbow, matchy, or organizing containers. And that's wonderful. But the way that they operate is different because you actually outsource it to organizers. Whereas with the Komari consultants, we work with you side by side. So think of it kind of like as a fitness trainer, right? Like we're there to guide you, support you, give you best practices and a personalized plan as well, so that you are able to learn the method. So it's the parable of, you give somebody fish, then they'll only eat for one meal. But if you teach someone how to fish, then they will be able to eat for a lifetime. So that's the main difference. And I find that when you do it the Komari way, then you will have very low rebound rate as well, low to none, because you're able to learn the method and to embody the method as well.
Great. So it's actually like looking at it from a more long-term perspective, which I get you. I've tried applying the home edit techniques, and of course, it gets organized for very temporary period of time, and then after that, it gets messy again. So it's very hard to be consistent, with that lifestyle. But again, you're talking about the pandemic and how people have started to tidy up and do some spring cleanings in their homes. But how do you solve the issue of letting go in the age of retail therapy? A lot of times now with online shopping, we tend to accumulate a lot of physical material things in our lives. So, how do you overcome this issue?
And this is such a great question because, we are inundated. We're living in a world where we're inundated with advertisement, right? Like all of the time. And so this is the thing about the Komari method because it's so introspective as well. So when you're asking yourself, like we're actually, okay, letting go seems like a basic life skill, but we're not taught how to let go, correct? Like, it's not something that we're taught at school or at home as well. And so what happens is that, let's say that, for example, you're just like, does it spark joy, right? Like if it sparks joy, then it's a blessing. So everything is either a blessing or a lesson. So if this no longer sparks joy, right? Like maybe I feel like, oh, you know what? This cup is a little bit too small. Like I drink a lot of water. So the lesson is that, oh, I need to upgrade to a bigger cup. So that way I can let it go with gratitude, because gratitude is the foundation of the Komari method. This is why it's so different from traditional organizing as well. So you're not only having a mental audit of everything that you own, you're keeping everything with intention, purpose, and joy. And ultimately, you'll be able to take away lessons and your own growth. That's why when I work with clients as well, I can't make the decisions for them. You need to define what joy means to you. I'm just there to support you and guide you, but you need to make the decisions of what sparks joy for you and what you're ready to let go.
Great. So sparking joy, if you talk about it, direct terms, it's actually, something that makes you happy, but in your sense, it's also something that, gives you purpose, and
Yes.
living with intentions, right? And, what about when it comes to things that bring sentimental value, for example? I think a lot of us have a hard time separating from those material things. So.
Absolutely. And this is why the Komari method, we actually have 5 categories in total. So one of the golden rules of Komari is, one, we don't buy organizing tools before we get started, because Marie Kondo actually says that organizing tools encourages hoarding. You're moving it around, making it look aesthetically pleasing. But the first step is to edit, to declutter, and to choose joy, right? And the next thing is we do it in 5 categories. The first one is clothing. The second one is books, paper. Komono means miscellaneous in Japanese. So that means like cleaning products, hobby items, everything under the sun that's not in the other 4 categories. And the final one is sentimental items. So I like to give the fitness analogy, because if you have never worked your joy checking muscles before, then you have to start from clothing. That's a light workout. Only you can define what joy means to you, because the clothing only you wear, right? No one else is wearing it. Your happiness is not dependent on other people. And then you work your way to the sentimental. That's the high intensity workout. So you don't start from the sentimental item first. Otherwise, you're going to set yourself up for failure. And what you end up doing is when you get to the sentimental as well, Marie Kondo actually recommends that the true purpose of gifting as well, like, you have to reflect, you get really introspective, like, can the memory live on without the memento? Maybe it was a great event, but do you actually need that paraphernalia, that item from whatever event? Maybe it's like an event keychain, right? But you don't actually need more keychains. So, and the other thing is sometimes we feel guilty. Someone maybe gave you a gift, maybe it's your best friend, maybe it's your mom who gave you a gift, but it doesn't spark joy, it's not your style. But you're only keeping it out of guilt. So what we do is we actually let it go with gratitude, or you pass it on. Like, I recommend to all my clients as well to have a gifting box, or you can give it to someone straight away if you think that is suitable for them, because you're amplifying the gift, the power of the gift. So this way you don't have to feel guilty, like once the exchange has happened, then you become the true owner of the gift and you decide what you do with it.
Great. And it's also the comfort, that knowing that it's, falling under the hands of someone that or another person's home, right? And that's why we call it pre-love items rather than, secondhand materials. But, it seems that there is a lot of process to the Konmari method. And would you say anyone's able to pick up this skill, or, is it something that, you need to inherit in your genes or something? I mean, is it something that anyone can just pick it up if they actually practice it in their life?
Absolutely. So I've taught everyone from age 2 to 80. So this method is for everybody. It's whether or not you're ready for it. You just have to have the mindset for it as well. So, like, we might not be natural born organizers, but it can absolutely be a learned behavior. It's just like muscle, right? It's just like exercising. We just need to work it, and then it will become easier.
Right. So, regardless of your age, it's still not too late to actually practice, right, the habit of tidying up. Great. And, how would you say the concept of minimalism interrelate with the Konmari lifestyle?
Oh, I love this question. It's one that comes up all the time, and it's a myth to bust as well, because for Marie Kondo herself, if you look at her social media, then you can see it's a very Japanese minimalist aesthetic. So that sparks joy for her. But for you might be a maximalist, and that's absolutely fine if you can honestly say that everything sparks joy. You're not keeping it just because, some people might say, oh, but everything sparks joy. But no, you actually have to go through each and every item to make a conscious decision to keep it in your life. And it's not about style, it's all about joy. And we're all unique individuals. So joy is going to look different for me and for you and for everyone else.
Yes, that's so true. I mean, like you said, at the end of the day, it's something that brings you joy. It's not just about style, and it's so hard, especially in the age of social media, right? We're so easily influenced by what everyone has, and we feel the need to actually, showcase, what we own. So, how would you say we can overcome this issue, right? I mean, for example, right, if I sometimes I feel conscious that I've been seen in that same attire in the previous event occasion, and I start feeling conscious to wear it again. So how would you say we can overcome this in the age of social media?
Oh, it's so true. And this is also why the Komari method is so powerful, because there's a lot of positive psychology, like I mentioned. Typically as humans, we have a lot of negativity bias. So we'll immediately go into, even when let's say that you're getting rid of something like a clothing. Sometimes some people might say, I'm too ugly for this, I'm too fat for this. But the way that we let go with the Komari method is we let go with gratitude. You have to let go with gratitude for the lesson that you learned. So let's say, for example, let's put it into the Komari context, right? Like, it's a red shirt. Oh, like I look so ugly in this, I'm too fat for this. No, we have to pause and reframe it. So we talk to ourselves kindly and positively with a lot of love. So it'll be transformed into, I now know that this isn't suitable for me. It becomes really neutral as well. So like you said, sometimes you might have these, oh, I've been seen in this dress and all that kind of stuff. But when we actually hone into it, it's like, you know what, I want to support sustainability. I don't mind being seen in the same outfit. This is my values. This is more important to me than impressing people, and oftentimes, your opinion matters more than what other people think as well. So it's really about cultivating a healthy relationship with yourself as well. I'm a Komari consultant, but my house isn't matchy containers like you see in home edit. And the reason why is because I want to practice sustainability. I want to repurpose what we have at home as well. So these are all the kinds of things, like we often will get really stuck into that Pinterest perfect ideal, right? And that's actually really toxic too. It's quite damaging. So when you are able to define what joy means to you, you will be able to make more confident decisions and own it.
That's so true. I mean, like you said, sometimes there's clothes that I feel too fat in it, and I tell myself, you know what, I might need it for later on once I lose weight, but that time never actually happens or comes. So again, like you said, it's having like that shift of mindset that you want to promote sustainability. And of course, moving on to the next segment, I mean, talking about decluttering for festivities like Ramadan. I mean, look at Malaysia, we celebrate so many festivities. There's Christmas, there's Chinese New Year, Deepavali, and, each of us, I don't know about, other households, but, sometimes we need to own, a different set of clothes for different occasions. And of course, many of us tend to refurbish our homes during the month of Ramadan. How would this lead to spiritual boosts?
Oh, I love this because, regardless of your faith, cleanliness is next to godliness, and there's a reason for it because it is spiritually cleansing. You're able to from the physiological point of view, when you declutter, it actually lowers your cortisol levels. That's why you feel good. You also boost your happiness chemicals as well. So that's why you feel great after you declutter and you're in a space of serenity. But when it comes to spirituality too, it's also when you're doing it, especially the Komari way, it's rooted in gratitude so that there's a lot of reverence for God. You're grateful for what you have. What you have turns into enough. Enough leads to contentment as well, rather than being stuck in the mindset of it's not enough. Like, we're all guilty of it. We've all been in that mindset of you go into a closet, you're like, I have nothing to wear. Right? So when we actually do the audit and we're grateful for all the things that we have, then you find that you reach that level of contentment and you're grateful for all that's been provided for you.
Right. And I think there needs to be a shift in habits and culture as well. For us, Malays, when we celebrate Hari Raya, we look forward to a new attire every year, right? And sometimes for my case, I feel that I've got sufficient clothes, but because it's a matter of like, oh, you need to, make new sets of clothing for the occasion. So, I succumb to that. But of course, when you talk about those who are actually, wanting to practice decluttering consistently as a lifestyle, what advice would you give to them? Especially with the festivities coming up, the trend is to usually, spend the last few days or weeks, before the special occasion to actually tidy out your homes. But what would the advice? What would you give to those who want to maintain it as a lifestyle?
I would say just start. Oftentimes, it's that inertia of getting started that blocks people. They feel like they have perfection paralysis as well. So they're like, oh, if I can't do it all in one shot, then I won't do it at all. But actually, when we're able to do it bit by bit and have a plan for it so that it's not going to be never ending, then that's where we can actually start to see the change as well. So I actually taught a group of senior citizens through one of my friends. She has a platform called University of Third Age. So I taught a group of nearly 30 senior citizens, and this was back in November, right? And they were so happy. They were just like, I'm done with my house now. Like, it was a 6-week program. They finished their house and they're like, I don't have to wait for the festive season. They felt, and that's the beauty of the Konmari method, because when you do the maintenance, it's called joy checking. So in my household, because I have 2 young kids, so we will do joy checking every 6 to 8 weeks because they physically grow out of their clothes, right? And it becomes second nature. Like, joy checking their shoes the other week, it literally took them 2 minutes to do because you set the foundation. When you do it the Komari way, you're building it on a stable foundation rather than building a house on sand, which that's when the rebound happens. So these are all little tips, like when you do it properly and correctly, then you will actually be able to rewire your brain.
Right, and I love that you're actually teaching your children from young, right? I mean, looking back, Rebecca, I'm just trying to zoom out and see, maybe talk about 30, 50 years ago, we've never had the issue of, clutters and hoarders. What would you say is actually causing this? I mean, I know we highlighted social media for instance, right, and online shopping, but what other, is it because, education, we're not putting much emphasis on this particular aspect in our education system, or we're not creating much awareness about this? What would you say is actually really causing the rise in these things?
It's there's so many, all right. Like we said, the environment that we live in, it's encouraging these compulsive shopping behavior, one-click shopping, all these kind of things. It just makes it too easy. So it starts from home, like especially if you have young kids as well, then parents need to model it as well. Otherwise, we're just hypocrites too. So we always, regardless of whether you have kids or not, if you live in a multi-generational household or with roommates, you start from yourself. Rather than judging other people, you start from yourself. And when the change occurs from you, then you're able to help other people as well. And when you're able to define what you need, what's a need versus a want, then you're able to have that pause between making that purchase too. So one of the things that I like to do is also waiting on my wants. So if there's something that's not a necessity, I'll put it into the shopping cart, but I might wait for a week. And then you'll go back to it. You're like, okay, you know what? I actually don't really need it. So I can just delete it from my cart. These are all just little practices. And like you said, it's all about building habits too. We're not taught this at school. And oftentimes, if we don't have the right role models, then we're not going to have that kind of role example. But we can absolutely learn it.
Great. I mean, that's a great practice to have, actually. Talking about impulsive shoppers, I was one myself, right? Especially when I see something that's on major discounts, right? I tend to impulsively purchase something, but like you said, put it in your shopping cart, leave it for a week, and then or even for a night, and really see if the next day you wake up wanting it even more or not, right? So I tend to go by that practice as well. So and also, talking about people who clutters, I love that, because I personally love organizing, and my husband is like the total opposite. But sometimes it's also about, creating that awareness for them, right? That, if you actually keep your lifestyle organized, it'll actually spark joy. And like you said, it's about being a good role model yourself, and hopefully influencing others to do the same.
Absolutely. And the thing is, like, especially with I do a lot of corporate workshops as well. So in those situations, it actually optimizes your time and your life when you're not busy looking for things. So when you're frantically looking for a piece of document or something, it raises your cortisol levels, and it actually takes you a few hours for you to get back down to baseline. So what happens is that, okay, maybe it was like a 5-minute scrambling around looking for something, but it impacts the rest of your day, right? Like, it's going to impact your decision making. You're going to be a lot more reactive rather than responsive. So we don't need more stress in our lives right now. We live in like highly stressful times. So this is another thing that is within our control, especially when the world is, there's so much going on. It's not within our control. So these are all the things that we can do. It's absolutely a form of self-care.
Great. Yes. And, talking about just 5 minutes of looking for that item, it may not sound like or seem a lot in a day, but if you actually accumulate it for the whole year, it's actually very time consuming, right? And, talking about hoarders, right? Sorry, I just wanted to kind of highlight about disorder. What are some of the reasons that people hoard material things in their lives?
It could be.
Is it something that can be solved? Yeah.
Yeah. So it can be, right? Like with anything, with commitment and dedication, we can find solutions for anything. But the main thing is also there's a lot of learned behavior. A lot of it could be generational as well. We all have some sort of trauma. Like, it might have been, like bankruptcies, or, like people have gone through wartime, famine, all these kinds of things too. So we tend to have these hoarding tendency as a survival instinct. So everyone has a bit of it, right? And then so we're able to see, like, even if life is great, you have a very stable, comfortable life, but you might know people, even yourself, to be like, oh my gosh, but what if I need it one day? What if I need it like one day? So we have to let go. We're also letting go to let go of fear and the non-physical. So that's why with the Komari method, you're practicing with your belongings first, but then once you embody the method, you can start to work on the habits and limiting beliefs, all of the things that will hold us back from living our true potential.
That's so true, Rebecca. I love that how you highlighted there are different causes to it, right? And I see it in my grandmother, for example. She was living in the war era, so rationing food portions, for example, was very important to her. And actually storing food, keeping it in the freezer for weeks sometimes. And of course, before we go into our closure, Rebecca, sorry, kind of want to maybe you can share some of the general tips for people. Is there anything specific that you would like to highlight before we go into our closure?
Sure, no problem. So for people who want to get started, just start, and then I actually have a lot of free resources on my Facebook group as well. And there's checklists as well, so like I mentioned, there are 5 categories as well. So if you're going to start, but you feel too daunted, you can go by subcategory. So let's say that you don't want to do your entire closet, then you can just say, I'm going to do shoes today. I'm going to do swimwear today. But like we said, it needs to be the totality of that one category so you can get that mental audit of how much you own. And that's it. You just do it bit by bit. You chip away at it and you're going to reach your goal eventually. There's so many ways to go about it, from reading the book, watching the Netflix shows as well. And there's so many ways to approach Komari. Just the same with fitness. Some people are great at doing YouTube workouts, like me. I'm not at all. My husband is. I need to go to a studio because I need to be pushed by a coach. So that's where people like Komari consultants will come in. There's no shame in asking for help. I think that's another barrier for a lot of people. There's a lot of stigma around it. They're like, why should I hire someone to help me? And why not? If it's going to help to optimize your time, you can triple the speed of getting it done and do it the proper way as well, then that's absolutely fine. Like, don't let your own beliefs, like the limiting beliefs, hold you back from reaching your goal. Yeah.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Rebecca. I think, a good point that you have there. Start somewhere, even if it's as small as, starting with your closet, your kitchen, but just start somewhere, right? Well, thank you so much, Rebecca, for the very insightful sharing session on the KonMari method. We do hope our audience have learned something about the approach to tidying up your houses. Well, thank you so much. My name is Sonia. See you again.
Thank you so much. Hope everyone has a spiritually nourishing and blessed Ramadan as well. Thank you, Sonia.
Thank you, Rebecca. Bye-bye.